Welcome to 9-1. Today we're going to talk about understanding probability and sample space. So we're going to start with understanding probability. Finding probability is being able to find the chance of an event occurring. Probabilities can be written in the form of a fraction, a decimal, or a percent. Probabilities tell us what the chances are of an event taking place based off of the total possible outcomes that could happen. The list of the different outcomes that could happen is called the sample space. So introductory probability, to begin with, we'll be talking about which events are more likely to happen than others. To figure these questions out, we need to figure out which event has more of it to choose from in the total number of outcomes. For example, if we have two events, and event A has 8 outcomes that could happen, and event B has only 4 outcomes that could happen, we would say that event A is more likely to happen. So we have this spinner here on the right. We've got blue, we've got red, we've got purple, and we've got yellow. The question is, which color is more likely to be chosen with the given wheel? So in order to do that, we need to figure out how many of each color show up. So we've got 1 red, 2 purple, 2 yellow, and 3 blue. Now the one that's more likely to be chosen is the one that's got the most number of choices in the wheel. In that case, it's going to be blue, because blue has 3 spots. Which color is least likely? Least likely means which one has the smallest number of choices, and that happens to be red, because it's only got 1 choice compared to 2 and 3 of the other colors. Now we've got a mix of triangles, squares, and circles, and we're going to look at which shape is most likely to be chosen. Well, we need to figure out how many of each there are. For triangles, there's 3. For squares, there's 4. For circles, there's 5. So when we want to know the most likely, we want to know the one that's got the most in the total number of outcomes. Well, there are 5 circles, and that's the most. So circle is most likely to be chosen. Least likely is going to have the smallest number of choices to choose from. In that case, it's going to be triangle, because there are only 3 triangles compared to 4 squares and 5 circles. Going back to a spinner, we've got blue spots, red spots, green spots, and yellow spots. So if we want to know which color is most likely to be spun, we want to know which one has the most pieces. Well, there's 3 blue, 3 green, there's 5 red, and 1 yellow. So we want to know the one that's got the most. That's going to be red. Red is most likely to be spun. Least likely is the number that's got the color that's got the smallest number of spots on the spinner. And that is going to be yellow, because there's only 1 spot of it. Go ahead and pause the video and answer these 2 questions, and then hit play and see how you did. For most likely to be spun, it's yellow, because if you'll notice here, yellow has the biggest piece of the circle. So it's going to be the most likely to be spun. Least likely is going to be orange, because you'll notice the piece for orange is the smallest on the spinner. So most likely yellow, least likely orange. Next, we're going to talk sample space. Sample space is a list of all of the outcomes that could possibly happen in a given event. You have to list all of the outcomes in the sample space. So if it could happen, it has to show up in the sample space. However, you can only list an outcome once. So if there's more than 1 chance of the same outcome happening, you still only list it 1 time. And you'll see what that means here in the following examples. So our first example is pretty common with probability. We're going to flip a coin. They want to know what the sample space is of flipping a coin. Now, we use these fancy brackets when we list sample space. So we list the total outcomes for flipping a coin. Well, you can either get heads or you can get tails. Those are the only 2 outcomes that could happen. So that is our sample space, heads and tails. Another common thing you'll see when dealing with probability is rolling a 6-sided die. Now you should remember a 6-sided die, it's got the dots on it. There's 1 dot on one side, 2 dots, 3 dots, 4 dots, 5 dots, and 6 dots. So basically we're looking at the numbers between 1 and 6. So if we want to know the sample space of rolling a die, the sample space would be the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. That would be our sample space, because that is what would happen if we roll the die. We'd either get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Our next one, what is the sample space of the event of choosing a letter from the word Mississippi? So basically we're going to take all the letters in Mississippi and we're going to randomly choose one. So this is where it's going to get a little different. Okay, so in our sample space, it's possible to choose an M, it's possible to choose an I, it's possible to choose an S, but then the next letter is another S. Well, we already have S listed in our sample space, so we don't list it again. We only list it once. So we can skip this S, skip the I, skip an S, S, I, and then we get a P. We don't have to list it a second time. We've already got I. So even though there are 11 letters in Mississippi, the sample space is only 4 letters, because there are only 4 different letters that we use to spell the word Mississippi. If we're given the word Immerman and we're asked to provide the sample space for Immerman, the different choices we have are I, M, we don't list M a second time, E, R, we already have an M, A, and N. So again, even though there are 8 letters in Immerman, there's only a sample space of 6 because M is used 3 times, but we only list things once in the sample space. Bringing back the spinner from previous examples, we want to know the sample space of spinning the spinner and having it land on a color. So we're just going to list off the different colors that are on this spinner. I see blue, red, yellow, and green. So again, even though there are 12 different spots it could land, there's only 4 different outcomes that could happen. You can either spin blue, red, yellow, or green. So that's all that we list in the sample space. Again, we never list outcomes more than once in a sample space. If it's in there once, it accounts for all of the outcomes that are the same as that one. So this one blue accounts for all 3 blue spaces. This red accounts for all 5 of the red spaces, and so on and so forth. Now, another picture that we've used already in this lesson, we want to know the sample space of choosing a shape. Okay, choosing a shape. So we look at the different shapes we've got. We've got triangles, we've got squares, and we've got circles. And that's all that's in our sample space, because that's all that we have here. We've got triangles, squares, and circles. Okay? Even though there are 3 triangles, we only list it once. Even though there's 4 squares, we only list it once. 5 circles, we only list it once. Okay? Again, it only gets listed once in the sample space, regardless of how many there are in the total outcomes. Go ahead and pause the video and give the sample space for the event listed on the right, then hit play and see how you did. So for this one, the only outcomes are apple, orange, banana, kiwi fruit, blueberry, and grape. Now again, they show up different amount of times. Like there's 35 apples in this outcome list, but we only list it once. There's 30 oranges, 10 bananas. Okay? Just because it's listed more than once, again, we only list it once in the sample space.